it was 342, 313 versus 342 gross remittances. Net portfolio investment, on which I've been questioned about why did you have to withdraw, you're favoring the suit boot. I'll give a complete reply on that, but let's look at the positions. Net portfolio investment at the end of 14 after UPA 2 was 59.1%, $1 billion, whereas NDA 1 ending March 19, sir, is that $59.1 billion has gone up to $67.2 billion. And the final one in this list is the external debt to GDP at period end. External debt to GDP ratio, which is a percentage ratio. At the end of UPA 2, that is 2009-14, 23.9% was the external debt to GDP ratio, which came down. External debt to GDP came down within 5 years from 23.9 to 19.7, sir. I would like to highlight this. External debt to GDP, that's the reduction, and therefore when we are talking about macroeconomic data and government now facing a situation on which the general sphere of talk or some members said, oh, no, you don't understand economy. You just seem to be floating. I'm sorry. On every one of the points, sir, I will give you detailed, specific, performance-based data. So if that is the first thing which I had to highlight, I'd like to now go to the point as to why at all in 19, the July budget had to come up with steps. And also some of the members started talking about, oh, public sector banks are making provision, which means you've allowed them to run away with the money which was given. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sure members who understand how bookkeeping happens, accounts are maintained, provisioning doesn't mean the money is taken away by them. Their assets will be confiscated, the assets will be auctioned, the money will be paid back to the concerned banks. So to have to continuously go on with this argument saying bank made a provision, it means you've written their loans off, is completely wrong. I'd like to place before you all, when provisioning is made, it is made only because annually the books will have to be maintained. But the pursuit of those who have cheated the banks, willfully or unknowingly, will happen. The assets will be brought, and the assets will be brought back to make sure that the banks and the other lenders will get their money back. So let that assurance be there in the minds of people who are talking about public sector banks which are making provisioning in their accounts. So then, when I presented the budget, I did speak about steps that we were taking, and before me, even the economic survey mentioned about the 4 R's which we adopted as a policy. What are the 4 R's, sir? I'd like to repeat from the economic survey and from my budget speech. There were 4 R's, which is essentially to address the twin balance sheet problem, about which all of us know. What is the twin balance sheet problem? Corporates took money from banks, their balance sheet went bad because they no longer couldn't make their profits. As a result, they couldn't pay the bank, NPAs grew, banks' balance sheets went bad. So, twin balance sheet problem. In order to address that, we came up with the 4 R's policy. Recognition of the problem, recapitalization of the bank, the point that many of them are picking up, resolution of the problem, and also reforms. What did that mean? Recognition of the problem, a review of the banks, which many of you are aware. Dr. Manmohan Singh is here. He'll know what happens in the Reserve Bank as regards quality assessment, asset quality review, which the banks have done, Reserve Bank has done. A review of banks' assets were all done, and they were recognized for the problem of NPA that they have, and consequent to the NPAs, as a proportion of the gross advances which have been given, the bank's NPAs naturally increased once you started recognizing the problem which prevails in them. You had to admit that this many number of NPAs prevail. And what was the number? In 2009 to 14, they were only 2.9%. Because, I'm sorry I have to say this, and it may sound political, that's when the phone banking was also happening. So obviously, the recorded number of NPAs at that time was very low, 2.9. It takes a while for the NPAs to show up. And when did it show up and when did it start showing up? Post 2014. The phone banking continued and 8.4% of NPAs were recognized between 14 and 19. And that figure, of course, I've stated in the parliament, I'll state it again. It had come down from 10 lakh crores to 8 lakh crores because we pursued those fellows who went away without paying the banks. So it's all right to give probably not so worthy a client money, but certainly for us, it's not right to let that fellow sit on it, but we pursued them. And the moment we started pursuing them, some of them stayed in the country, some of them fled. And those who fled are coming back. Their assets are being confiscated. And that is the story, sir. And that's the story why we needed the 4 Rs. And the 4 Rs began with recognizing the problem and then to recapitalize the bank. The bank had no more money. What was the narrative, sir? 2014, 15? Banks are not lending. There's no money going to the businessmen. And then when you recapitalized banks, banks had something to lend to the new creditors, lend to the new borrowers. And as a result, how much did we give this time in the budget? 70,000 crores. Many members referred to it. Why did I have to give that? Banks had no money. People were coming to borrow, they couldn't give anything because monies were not coming back, NPAs were NPAs. And if they didn't get the money back, how does bank's business go on? After all, bank has to earn money by lending money out. The principal doesn't come, the interest doesn't get serviced, you are an NPA. With many number of NPAs, banks have no business to do because their core investment, which is money which has to go out, was not there with them. So recapitalization was essential in the interest of the country, and that's what the Prime Minister clearly has advised me to do, and therefore 70,000 crores were given to us. And that has helped. And that has helped, I'll tell you, that when people started telling there's no liquidity, people started telling liquidity is not there at all. With the help of Reserve Bank of India, I've met up with both the public sector banks and the private sector banks, proved that it was not for want of liquidity, but the flow of liquidity was not happening. Again, quality of assets, I'll come to that for a minute, to show that between the first and the second outreach programs which happened in October, there was even a press release given out. I recall the number approximately, you may refer to the press note and not pin me down to the numbers that I'm quoting here, 250,000 crores have been distributed through the public sector banks. How was that possible if we didn't give them liquidity? So, sir, please, recapitalization had a reason, and that paid off. And that paid off to clear the sentimental feeling about the Indian economy that there's no liquidity, liquidity is not being available, it is not being made available for people who want to run businesses, MSMEs, people who want to buy seeds or do their agricultural activities, people who wanted to buy vehicles, all of them by category have been given loans. And that's because we were able to recapitalize. The third R, sir, resolution. The resolution of the stressed assets, sir, is expeditiously being done because we have passed the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. On that specifically, a lot of information can be shared, and I'm glad to say, first of all, that more than 2,162 corporate insolvency resolution processes were admitted. I can give you data on how many have been resolved. During the month of October 2019, corporate insolvency resolution process has really given a major result. The time taken, I will not talk about, I'll even give you the detail if you have the time, sir, 0 to 180 days resolution in 5 cases have happened. 181 to 270 days, 30 resolutions have happened. 270 days plus 124 resolutions have happened. Average number of days taken for resolving disputes has been 374. So the timeline with which the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code wanted resolution of these insolvency issues are nearly getting close. We wanted it to be done within a year. 374 is the average. We are improving on it. I just want to give you very clearly this figure only because I want people to know that the 4 Rs that we had adopted are purpose-serving and the results are visible. If 70,000 crores helped banks spread liquidity, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which was brought during the NDA 1 period, is showing results. And we also very quickly are responding.
Please, no, not allowed. Please, not yielding. Not yielding, please take your seat.
We are also responding to periodically amending as is demanded by the companies which are undergoing the process, the NCLT, NCLAT, all of them giving their inputs. We are coming up periodic amendments only because we want to keep it as a robust law. The resolution aspect I've spoken, sir. Reforms. The recently announced, this is particularly about banks because I started with the twin balance sheet problem. The reform steps also resulted in the merger of 10 public sector banks into 4 entities. Why did we do it? Because many of the banks which were in some parts of the country where they were only the CASA accounts where lots of deposits were being collected did not have an avenue to lend. Whereas banks in some other regions utilized the entire money which they had and could lend, but had to borrow at a higher rate from elsewhere to meet with the additional demand which existed in their regions. That is one of the reasons. Second, when we are able to bring them together, there's a better utilization of the savings which are otherwise lying dormant. Third, today we need banks in India which can scale up and meet up with the challenges of the day. And therefore we thought it was important. A lot of other matchmaking exercise happened, whether technology are compatible, whether the regional sentiments are all taken care of, and so on. So when we have merged banks, that's my 4th R, which is the reform. So recognition of the problem, recapitalization just so that they can go on with it, and solution through the IBC for all the other side of the balance sheet, and then reforms, which is resulting in better efficient banks. We have even appointed risk managers so that from now at least the kind of phone banking related risks are averted. Now, obviously, all this will be factored in when we talk about why then the GDP is growing, slowing down. I just want to say one thing, sir. Between 2014 and 19, the GDP accelerated 7.4% in 14-15, 8% in 15-16, 8.2 in 16-17, before the lagged effect of the twin balance sheet set in. And as a result, private investment started suffering because the NPAs were still alive in the banks. They didn't have additional money to go on investing further. So the lagged effect of declining investment caught on, and therefore the GDP growth rate came down to 7.2% in 17-18 and 6.8 in 18-19. And I also recognize that in the first quarter of 19-20, clearly the decline is very pronounced. We are able to see that. I just wanted to put this in context because it has not come from nowhere. It's not dawned on one morning. It's obviously got a trail. If you want to go back to see where the trail lies, you know where it lies. I wanted to highlight that. I wanted to highlight that, sir. Of course, I'll come to that. Don't worry. I will come to that. But that happened much later. The problem was on us even on the dawn of 14 when we came in.
Please.
Sir, again, sir, if we are questioned on GST, I'll talk on GST a bit elaborately, but because now I'm in a mood to compare performances. GST was, yes, right, Jairam was right. It was from 2004, it's been on. And there was pressure saying, is India going to be at least making that one big effort to make one market out of this country? Will GST happen at all? How many years did we lose? And there were several members. Oh yes, don't worry, I'll answer about that also. I've heard that even as you spoke. Sir, I would like to tell you. Yes?
Please, बैठ कर comment ना करें, please.
So I will tell you, this emphasis on you opposed it. He very clearly highlighted, sir, that the states and the compensation matter. I was glad a lot of our members raised it. States and the compensation matter was not addressed by the UPA. As a result, many of the states did not have the confidence. Are they talking about trust today? Sir, are they talking about trust today? Sir, I didn't have a running commentary when they spoke.
Please.
We don't want to interrupt the minister, but the fact is that she should study the bill which went to the standing committee during our time and came back. You should read, please, the letter which the then Chief Minister of Gujarat wrote to the then Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, and you should also read and be informed about the discussions that your three-member team had with us.
She has not
for
yielded.
the constitutional
She has
amendment.
not yielded, Anandji. She has not yielded. No.
Select committee report of this house.
Yes, you must also
Please.
know what was
Please. मैंने इस बातचीत की इजाजत नहीं है.
Amazing.
Please.
Sir,
मैंने इस
it's
बातचीत की इजाजत
amazing.
नहीं. Please. मैंने आपस में बातचीत की इजाजत नहीं दी है. Please. मैडम. Please.
three-member room from your side.
माननीय आनंद जी इसकी अनुमति चेयर ने नहीं दी है. माननीय आनंद जी चेयरमैन ने इसकी अनुमति नहीं दी है. प्लीज माननीय मंत्री जी चेयर ने इसकी इजाजत नहीं है. आनंद जी चेयर ने इसकी इजाजत नहीं दी है. आप बगैर चेयर की इजाजत के बोलना है. बैठे प्लीज.
Sir, sometimes it's very difficult, I know, to accept when it's being pointed out. We sit to hear it. Sir, we sit to hear even baseless allegation thrown on us. Sometimes. I'm sorry, not on this.
Please,
I'm sorry,
please.
I don't get up, sir.
Not allowed.
I shall not sit and I shall not hear this. I'm sorry, sir, you called me and I'm speaking.
Nothing is going on
I'm
record.
sorry, sir, you
No, it
called
will
me
not
and
go
I'm
on the
speaking.
record.
I shall not
It will
accommodate
not go on the record. Please.
Absolutely not.
Please, Anand ji. Please.
The fact is there was an understanding between the government and the
Any number of
माननीय आनंद जी
now
चेयर ने इसकी
not
अनुमति
suffice.
नहीं दी है. Please take your seat. Please take your seat. Please take your seat.
Sir,
Please take your seat.
I mean, you've called me and I'm standing up to speak. And
Please
if
speak.
there are anything objectionable, there are times and ways in which any member of the House can
Again,
get
please,
up and object.
पूरा सदन
But
इसका पालन करेगा. I hope so. Please.
there goes.
Please.
There goes.
No,
the
this
Deputy
will be
Leader of the
unending.
House.
I will not allow.
I'm not
Nothing
willing
will go on record. I will not allow. Please, no, Mr. Ansana. Please take your seat. I will not allow. Please, no, nothing will go. Please take your seat. Please take your seat. Let the minister speak. Please. This is not proper. बिना चेयर के अनुमति के बोलना. अगर आप चाहते हैं सदन चलाना तो फिर I'll be helpless. Please.
सर ये क्या है सीनियर मेंबर नहीं एक मिनट सारे सदन का जो भी चर्चा थी हमने सुनी उसके बाद एक रिप्लाई नहीं सुन सकते.
Please take your seat.
हद हो गई.
Honorable, please take your